The words that slipped from Marcus Thorne's mouth froze the courtroom. If he dies on the street, that's not my liability. My liability ends at the property line. The air seemed to turn into ice. I've been a judge for nearly 4 decades, seen my share of absurdities, and heard enough tragic stories to fill a book. But never before had I heard someone speak about another human being so coldly, like they were simply another transaction. This wasn't a legal issue anymore. It was something far worse. It was a matter of humanity. I am Judge Frank Caprio, and in this courtroom, we don't just look at the law, we look at the lives behind it. The man before me, Marcus Thorne, stood at the defendant's table. He was in his mid-40s, an arrogant real estate developer, the type who believed he owned the world, or at least the buildings within it. Dressed in a crisp charcoal suit, the kind that screamed money, and with a gold watch that gleamed under the courtroom lights, Thorne oozed a kind of confidence that only money could buy. He tapped a pen rhythmically against his briefcase, ignoring the elderly man seated across from him. That man was Elias Vance. Elias was 82, frail, and weathered by life. He didn't have a briefcase, just a plastic bag with some crumpled papers. He didn't have a suit, just an old olive green jacket, faded with age and history. He sat hunched over as if trying to shrink away from the world that had turned its back on him. The case was simple, on paper at least, eviction proceedings. But this wasn't just about an eviction. It was about a man's life. Elias had lived in the same rent-controlled apartment for over 30 years. His only family left was a dog, Buster, a blind, aging dog who had been his companion for years. A promise had been made to Elias long ago that he would always have a place to stay, no matter what. I looked down at the file in front of me. It was thick, thicker than I expected for an eviction case. "Mr. Vance," I began, my voice soft yet firm, "you've lived here for 32 years?" Elias nodded slowly. His voice was gravelly, his hands shaking slightly as he spoke. "Yes, Your Honor." "Why are you being evicted?" I asked. Thorne was quick to respond, his voice sharp and dismissive. "He's violating the lease. He has a dog. It's a no-pet building. I've asked him to get rid of it, but he refuses. It's simple, Judge. He's a nuisance. He's hoarding too." I turned to Elias. "Mr. Vance, do you have a dog?" Elias looked up, his eyes soft with love and pain. "His name's Buster. He's 15 years old, blind in one eye, doesn't bark much. He just sleeps." Thorne scoffed loudly. "It's a dog, Judge. It's a violation. The lease is clear." I leaned forward, feeling the weight of the situation. "But you're evicting him because of a dog?" I asked, my voice steady but laced with disbelief. "This man has lived here for over 3 decades, and you're evicting him for a dog?" Thorne shrugged, his arrogance seeping through. "Business is business, Judge. I have luxury tenants moving in. I need to renovate." "Renovate? You're gutting this man's home," I said sharply. "This isn't just about a dog. This is about trying to push out someone who has no voice left. You want to turn this into a luxury apartment building, and you're willing to throw out an elderly man to do it." Thorne didn't flinch. He stared at me, calculating. "He signed the lease, Judge. He agreed to it." "But did he understand it?" I asked, my voice calm but insistent. "Did he understand that signing away his home meant giving up his dog, the last piece of family he has left?" Thorne was silent for a moment before he barked, "He signed it. That's the law." I turned to Elias, my eyes softening. "Mr. Vance, did you understand the terms when you signed the new lease?" Elias looked down at his hands, his voice quiet. "I couldn't read the small print, Your Honor. They told me I had to sign it to keep the heat on." Thorne's laugh was dry, dismissive. "Ignorance isn't an excuse." I felt the tension rise in the room. "It is if you've taken advantage of someone who couldn't defend themselves." The courtroom held its breath. "Mr. Vance, do you have family? Somewhere to go?" I asked gently. Elias shook his head, his eyes brimming with tears. "I don't have anyone. My wife died years ago. My son, he didn't come back from the war. Buster is all I have." Thorne crossed his arms, clearly uninterested. "That's unfortunate, but I've got deadlines. You can go to a shelter if you can't stay here." The room went cold at Thorne's words. Elias's shoulders slumped, and he pulled out a yellowed piece of paper from his bag. He held it out to me, hands trembling. It's from Mr. Henderson, Elias whispered, the man who owned the building before. He promised me I could stay here. He gave me this letter. I took the letter carefully, reading the words of a man who had been long gone. I looked up at Thorne, his expression unreadable. Mr. Thorne, I said slowly, this letter doesn't just talk about property value. It talks about loyalty. It talks about promises made, promises kept. Thorne was silent, his eyes darting nervously. That's not legally binding. I held up the letter, my voice firm. It is. Mr. Henderson granted Elias Vance a life estate. He has the legal right to live here for as long as he lives. This isn't a lease. This isn't a transaction. This is a promise. Thorne's face drained of color. He was shaking now, the weight of his actions crashing down on him. Mr. Thorne, I said quietly, you may have bought this building, but you didn't buy the man. You didn't buy his integrity, and you didn't buy his promise. There was a long silence. Thorne stood there, his arrogance replaced by fear, realizing that his business dealings had just collided with something far more powerful than money. I turned to Elias, who was now sitting straighter, a sense of dignity returning to him. Mr. Vance, I'm ruling in your favor. You cannot be evicted. The life estate deed is valid, and Mr. Thorne cannot evict you or your dog. This case is dismissed with prejudice. The gallery erupted in applause, and I felt a warmth spread through the room. But the battle wasn't over for Marcus Thorne. The charges were far from settled, and now the law would take its course. I looked at him one last time. You've gambled with people's lives, Mr. Thorne, and now it's time to pay the price. Marcus Thorne left the courtroom in handcuffs, his world crumbling around him. And Elias? He left with dignity, his companion Buster by his side, heading toward a new chapter in his life, one that wasn't defined by greed or manipulation. This case isn't just about laws or contracts, it's about understanding the human stories behind them. In the end, we may follow the letter of the law, but it's the spirit of justice that guides us.